Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Monday, everybody. It's the start of a new week, and today we are going to take a look at Jupiter's upcoming sextile with Uranus, which is one of the major transits of the year, actually. When you look at all the transits of the year, as I do prior to the beginning of each new year, you usually see a couple of transits that you bookmark, slower moving transits that don't happen as often. This is not the slowest moving transit in the world. Jupiter's moving at a good clip right now, but Jupiter contacting Uranus through any kind of traditional aspect is going to be significant. So we're going to break this into two parts. Today, we're going to talk about the archetypal nature of Jupiter and Uranus. And tomorrow or Wednesday, we will take a look at Jupiter and Uranus according to your rising sign. So we'll take it through the whole sign houses and look at the different configurations of this sextile. So here by the way, in the meantime, I almost forgot. I am really excited to be sharing with all of you a course that is being offered by two of my friends and mentors in the Bhakti yoga tradition. If you go to bhaktiwise.com, my teachers Loka and Vidarbha, who are they live both in India and the United States, and they are in India right now and preparing to begin an online 12-week immersion into the Bhagavad Gita. These are two teachers that I couldn't recommend more highly. They're sweet, they're insightful, they hold great classroom spaces that are very conversational and intimate. The classes are held via Zoom. If you can't attend live, then the classes are available by recording. If you click on the Study With Us tab, the class is by donation. They decided after some reflection to just make it totally by donation. So you can look at the 12-week program if you click on the Study With Us tab. And at the bottom, you'll notice the Enroll Now option. And you just make a donation, whatever you can do. And no minimum, no maximum, just give what you can and do the best, give according to your budget for a 12-week class. People have been asking me, do you have a suggested donation? And I would say, $75, $100 would be good, but you can do whatever is in your budget. It's really a fantastic program. You can optionally take some additional classes for free through the program on mantra meditation. So highly recommend it. And it's in my newsletter as well. If you're getting my newsletter, you'll see a sign up link in the newsletter. And I'm going to have them back on probably once or twice before the program starts. It is held on Tuesday nights, 8 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, starting March 15th. So if you're interested in learning more about Bhakti and the Bhagavad Gita, which is a daily part of my practice, and these are two teachers, if you like my content, you like the way in which I present, the spiritual dimension of astrology, here's two of my teachers. Go study with them. Check it out. So, all right, let's take a look at the real-time clock, and we are going to be looking at this. Here is Jupiter in Pisces within that 3-degree engagement range now of Uranus, and the 3-degree range is the most important. So let's take a look at how that's going to perfect. They're in a sextile. We're going to talk about what that means. If you look at the inferior superior distinction of the aspect, which is questionable when it comes to outer planets, I'm still not sure how I feel about doing that. But if you were to, Jupiter would be in the superior position. Either way, Jupiter-Uranus combinations are pretty exciting. So I'm really excited about this transit. And I actually had the first, I would say, experience of this Jupiter-Uranus dynamic last night. I'll tell you a little bit about that later. Here is Jupiter, though, at 8 degrees of Pisces. Uranus is, of course, at about 10 degrees of Taurus. Take Jupiter forward a couple more days, and it starts getting closer now. By the end of the week, by next week, it's within a degree. So it's a long, slow process, and that's why it is one of the more potent transits of the year. Two slow-moving planets make a long contact. You have been feeling their contact building for at least a week already. You've got the two of them coming together finally. Let's see here. This is between February 17th and 18th. So right around the middle of this month, there's about 10 more days to go as this transit is building. But then you have the separation period. And the separation period will take us forward all the way till about March 3rd, right? So that's why if you take it all into consideration, it's about a month-long transit. And most transits are not going to last that long. And it's between two very slow moving planets, heavy hitters, Jupiter and Uranus. I'm so used to thinking about Pluto, right? Actually, this week we'll also be talking about the fact that Mercury is one last time moving through the conjunction with Pluto as well. But so Jupiter making a sextile with Uranus. Let's break this down and talk about the aspect and the planets involved. First of all, it's a sextile. Sextiles are of the nature of Venus, which means that generally speaking, you have an aspect that is going to be beneficial, that brings good fortune, that brings pleasure or joy, that brings benefits and good fortune. Venus was the goddess of good fortune, which means that Venus is related to pleasure. There's base pleasure, and then there's the pleasure of the soul. There's spiritual happiness, and then there's, run-of-the-mill happiness, like you ate a particularly good brownie, so it's relative, of course, but Jupiter and Uranus coming together, generally speaking, in a sextile is going to be positive, especially if both planets, well, at least the traditional planet is well dignified, which in this case it is. Jupiter's in its own sign of Pisces. These are two feminine signs. One of the things to note about the feminine signs is that they were said to develop more. One of the ways that Robert Schmidt described them that always stuck with me, he's one of the great translators of the Hellenistic source text, and was responsible in large part for bringing about the renaissance of ancient astrology in the modern era. He described, the feminine signs as one of the ways that they're described is as slow to develop, which means more organic, more process oriented. So I wouldn't look for just one day, just one flash, just one moment, or just one event, but a process oriented experience that will come through in the next days and weeks. So with that in mind, Jupiter is so well dignified. Jupiter connecting in a positive aspectual Venusian way through a sextile with Uranus. Let's break this down now and talk about what you can expect on an archetypal level. First of all, when you look at Jupiter, you have the general principles of growth and fertility, especially in a water sign. So things grow and things tend to prosper. And Jupiter provides not only prosperity, but a sense of abundance and opportunity, blessings. Jupiter is the bestower of faith, as well as a planet that is associated with the judgments that we make. There is the idea that, for example, a debilitated Jupiter can lead to faulty reasoning or faulty, not so much faulty reasoning as much as it is troubles making wise judgments. This is something that I heard another astrologer friend of mine say recently that really stuck with me. And it's true, Jupiter was associated with judges and just or wise judgments. So we have a well-dignified Jupiter right now. So keep that in mind. That is going to create the opportunity for wise or good judgments. And then when you put it with Uranus, you're putting it with a planet who represents the principles or impulses toward freedom, liberation, breakthroughs, leaving behind the habitual in favor of the experimental. You have Uranus as the sudden, erratic, disruptive qualities, the lightning strike that illuminates but sometimes destroys old structures along the way. You also have the impulse toward the future and progress, and you also have the need or impulse toward change at all costs. So rapid, sudden, developmental, evolutionary, progress-driven impulses. So when you put these two planets together, you're talking about some of the combinations being very positive in a sextile with a well-dignified Jupiter. You get this kind of excitement, the themes of liberation and expansion, big or sudden developments and opportunities that come along unexpectedly, openings that come rapidly and in ways that are bigger than you would have imagined. the need to create more choices or to go in new directions that are unexpected. If you've been feeling stuck in something for a long time, the sudden impulse or the sudden opportunity, let's call it impulse and opportunity to create a change where one has been needed. You have also the quality is almost like a drug, in the sense it's like a little bit like an energy drink is what I would compare Jupiter and Uranus to. It can be rapid, sudden, exciting, and like Jupiter Uranus will provide us with opportunities that are so sudden, so fast, so exciting that the one, of course, shadow is going to be the potential for something to become sort of erratic and excessive, too much, too quickly, too off script. And of course, Jupiter Uranus could become rebellious and intolerant of anything holding it back. Anything that comes up that's sort of too good to be true, that's really on the surface seems like, hey, this will solve everything, but will it? You know, for example, an infomercial. You're watching an infomercial and it's trying to sell you some new home gym equipment, and it's this radical technology, and you find yourself wearing some silly thing on your head, gyrating in something, hoping it'll change your abs. And, so you have to be careful of the impatient and fast promise of redemption or breakthrough. But also problems can be very suddenly resolved or figured out. Things can come up that offer you a path out of some restrictive or habitual space that you're sick of very quickly and actually be very, amazingly helpful. There's that sense of, I'll never forget, Jupiter Uranus opposition was present when Ashley and I decided to expand and relocate our yoga studio. An opportunity, basically what happened was this. It was so Uranus opposite. It was Jupiter opposite Uranus. Basically, the studio that we had, the block was under construction. It started under construction, and they were literally like massive jackhammers blowing up pounding apart like a concrete parking lot, and like dynamite being in the whole building would shake. And then because they were unearthing everything, the building we were in started having a rat problem. It was really messed up and super Uranian in terms of the disruptiveness and the sudden big boom of the dynamite. And then this is an opposition, remember? And then very unexpectedly, we took some complaints to the building manager just about the noise and what can we do? And we weren't, trying to be jerks or anything. We're just like, what do we do? We're trying to do yoga here. And the building manager was like, well, if you want, I could let you out of your lease for free and transfer you to one of my other buildings. This guy had multiple buildings, and it was ended up being this building that was across town, and it was bigger, and we were looking for an upgrade, but he was willing to sort of keep within our rent range. It was fantastic. I'll be honest, it was such a dream come true. And when you know that something is opening up and there's wow, this is a rare opportunity. It might constitute, something that I've wanted or desired for a while, and you just go for it. You're just like, all right, well, I'm just going to go for it. That's a very Jupiter Uranus type of moment. Now, sextiles aren't the loudest, boomiest kind of aspect like an opposition is, where there's a lot of conflict and then big resolution. And so it might be a little subtler, but the idea of things coming together harmoniously and providing solutions or breakthroughs where there have been sudden problems or sudden setbacks or longstanding ones, that's one of the great promises of this aspect in general. Also, just the feeling of transcending something that you've been struggling with for a while. Suddenly, you just let go of an unhealthy or toxic dependency. I'm free again. I promise you there will be a lot of people that will quit smoking or quit drinking, or they'll just be a light bulb moment where there is some sense of being liberated from something that they've struggled with. And with that comes a feeling of rebirth and awakening. And it's like, again, it's like a drug. It's like being plugged into a freedom machine. There's also sometimes, however, there is going to be a rush to free ourselves as quickly as we can from as much as we can. And that's not necessarily a good thing either. So let me give you an example from, again, just from years of working in the yoga studio world. So I was teaching classes of yoga teacher trainers, and sometimes people hit that stretch of studying yoga where they start giving some unhealthy things up, whether it's relationships or substances or lifestyle patterns that just aren't really healthy. And you know what? That's a good thing. But then sometimes they'll take it too far. They'll be like, I'm going to sell all my possessions and live in a van down by the river. I'm going to walk barefoot to Africa. It's like, I don't know if that's possible. So, I'm going to go get an RV and drive across America and write about it. So this kind of thing comes up, and sometimes just, it's like the first step or two is a good one. Maybe you quit smoking, maybe you shed some kind of unhealthy dependency, and that's positive. But it's step 3, 4, 5, or 6 where, you're going to start living in a treehouse or something. And it's just like, well, maybe pull it back just a little bit. So you do have to be careful of that. There's also just this quality of genius behind Jupiter-Uranus contacts, where an illuminating insight, a radical new idea that frees you up in your business, cooperation and collaboration with others in relationships. Although there is a kind of very idealistic quality about this combination that you should be a little bit careful of. It can be sort of uncompromising, though the Venusian dynamic of a sextile, you're probably going to see a little less of that sort of like, what, you don't like my great new idea that will set every soul free from suffering forever? I mean, this combination of Jupiter and Uranus can be associated with, I'm going to save everyone. I'm going to save, someone's being saved. And, whenever the word salvation comes in, it's like, if it's being used in the right, in a humble, careful way, good. If it's being used, in a, if it's being used flippantly, stridently, and so forth, there, it's often questionable how close, how close salvation is to damnation in someone's voice. They're very closely tied sometimes. So be careful of that, impulse to be free, some ideal that you're trying to fulfill at all costs that goes too quickly, too far, and doesn't leave enough room for fault, flaw, imperfection. And remember the hangover that it eventually comes if you go too far, too quickly in the direction of rapid development and progress. Things are filled up and things are emptied in this world, and we know that. So, of course, people can have great ideas that they think will liberate everything, and they're delusional, or, they're not realistic in some way. Those are shadows as well. So these are the combinations, the archetypal qualities. It was really interesting. For me, like, there are certain spaces I get into, and this is just me speaking as someone has this daily spiritual practice that's really important to me. But there's times when I get sort of bored, where it doesn't feel, I like to say that my chanting, for example, if it feels like there's some moisture there, like there's rain falling on fertile soil, or is it just really dry? So maybe dry is a better word than boring, because I'm never quite bored by chanting. I always feel a sacred sense of duty around it, that I really love. And it gives a lot back to me. And most days I love my practices, but I get into stretches where if I'm bored, I'll notice that I'm like watching a little too much TV in the evenings, or I'm falling into like, all right, what's the next 45-hour Netflix thing I can get into or something? It's just something that's going to take me off because I'm having a hard time staying interested in or engaged in, present and conscious with whatever I'm doing in my life or whatever patterns or habits I'm falling into. Jupiter Uranus comes along, and it is just like last night, I just found myself being like, there's a few things that I'm doing in the evenings because I'm bored that I should swap out for some things that are just a little bit healthier. Not that I'm doing anything wrong by sitting and watching Netflix, but you know what I mean? Yeah, I've just been doing this for too long. I don't want to watch Netflix anymore. Be gone, Netflix, you know? So I had one of those moments last night, and I sat down and started reading a new book that I'd wanted to read for a while, on bhakti yoga and Sri Radha, who's the goddess at the center of the tradition. And I was just like, God, this feels so much better. I'm so glad that I just didn't, it's funny how things that you do for fun that you think are giving you some space to relax are actually stressing you out, or you're bored with them and you're only doing them because it's what I do in the evenings when I'm trying to relax. You know what I mean? So I had this little breakthrough last night, and I was like thinking of like, where did this really strong, and it was not just, it was not just like, I think I'll do something else now. It was more, it was more like, throw your wine glass into the fireplace. It was like, I am done with this. I rise up. I will go and do something healthy. Damn it. And I was like, where is this coming from? Afterwards, I was laughing at myself. I was like, and then I realized, oh yeah, Jupiter and Uranus are connecting in a sextile right now. They're giving signs and omens for such experiences. And what was so interesting about this, right, is that this is the crazy part. The book that I was reading on the goddess, I was like, this is such a good book. I ended up getting an email that I read this morning from the author of the text, who's a friend of mine. So I had the book on recommendation from a friend who is friends with the author. And, she reached out to just be like, hey, I like your YouTube channel, blah, blah, blah. And, here's what I'm up to if you want to share it with your people. And I was like, yes, I do. So that all of that sense of collaboration, remember that Jupiter is also associated with the 11th house, where it rejoices, the place of friends and allies. It's also the planet associated with the triplicity rulerships, because triplicities work by families of trines, and trines are of the nature of Jupiter. And the triplicities were generally thought of as families of support, you could say, built into the zodiac. That dignity is a very Jupiterian dignity, in the sense that it has a lot to do with where we find support and collaboration. So Jupiter sextile Uranus can also be about invigorating and exciting collaborations with other people. Not surprisingly, I've been collaborating with my two teachers about their upcoming course with regard to the Bhagavad Gita. And also we are collaborating with some people right now we're looking at the possibility of doing some collaborative work to build a few different things for the business. So for example, the donation-based reading clinic is something we're starting to move forward with a little by little. We're also looking at the possibility of helping build a small retreat center on a small piece of land to eventually host semi-regular gatherings throughout the year, so that people can come and study astrology and bhakti in a more experiential, in-person way. These are all just possibilities at the moment that are being, sort of looked into. But it's very Jupiter Uranus. It's very Jupiter heading into a conjunction with Neptune later this spring. So you can watch for those collaborations to come through as well. At any rate, I hope that this has been a useful introduction to Jupiter and Uranus. To me, Jupiter and Uranus is like, it is the energy that sparks creative revolution. And but there is the sense of there being an opportunity and there being some unknown and some risk associated with it. And you have to go out on a limb and put you got to have some skin in the game to take advantage of a Jupiter Uranus dynamic. So there is a sense of like, is this too much? Is it too big of a leap? Like that. And you got to be careful. Like sometimes it will be too much of a leap, but a lot of the times you can't, no risk and no potential for gain. So at any rate, I would love to hear your stories about this. So please use the hashtag grabbed remember the planets in the Indian tradition were called grahas or grabbers. And there is a way in which the planets signify things in life that we get swept up in. And so best to be aware of what the planets are signifying, the archetypal fields that they signify, and the way that they're coming in and out of our lives. And by looking at them and exploring the stories, we stand to be more of a participant in the unfolding of our lives as much as we can, as much as we have facility to. So on that note, please use the hashtag grab, put Jupiter, Sextile, Uranus, tell your story. Make it concise, make it short. Please don't share a lot of details about your chart. Just tell us a good Jupiter, Uranus story. If you don't feel like sharing in the comment section, you can always email us. You can email us at grabbed@nightlightastrology.com, grabbed@nightlightastrology.com. We don't respond to any of those emails. We just aggregate and share. So don't email us anything you don't want us sharing. Okay, so I'm also excited to announce that because we are finished with the long series that we did on the misconceptions of the zodiac, I will be starting my next series, which is on the Tao Te Ching. So I might be starting that this week. We'll see. Just depends on, I haven't completely written all of the organized, I should say, the way that I want to present the material. But if you are looking for the edition that I'll be reading from, it is the Tartra Cornerstone edition of the Tao Te Ching. So I highly recommend the Tartra Cornerstone edition if you want to buy it and follow along. You can get it used on Amazon or wherever people sell books that isn't Amazon these days. So, all right, that's what I've got for you. I hope you guys have a great day, a great start to your week. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section, share your stories, and I look forward to more soon. We'll be taking Jupiter and Uranus through the houses probably tomorrow or Wednesday. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.